There are so many things in spiritual life that I would love to say, but just can't find words for, can't find explanations for it. It's hilarious in the sense that we've got a riddle going on that we've created for ourselves in some unknown state of mind to play this game of life and to try and figure out what this life is. But very interestingly, the world is set up, the game is set up in such a way that we are attracted to all the things that are not helpful toward finding that ultimate truth about ourselves, what our nature is, what the purpose is, what is this that's going on, what is this thing called life that we find ourselves in the middle of. It's such an amazing ride with so many colors and so many beauties and so many distractions along the way that we just get stuck, and we go out there looking for answers, through the senses into this material world, trying to figure out our nature, not knowing that it's dreamlike and that every answer of the dream is only answered with 3 more questions, and that they just keep multiplying. The more we learn, the more wonder there is behind it and the farther out it goes. So I was reading tonight in one of our old friends, Brother Lawrence's The Practice of the Presence of God. And he's talking about mind and the necessity of calming mind, because the sages say that it's the active mind, which is made active by the ego identifying with its thoughts and infecting the mind with the idea of me and mine. That's what keeps the mind restless and noisy and constantly searching and just jumping about. And that is the veil. That is what blinds us from finding the treasure, from finding the truth of our nature in this world, that it lies within. That you're playing a video game and you start out and the whole point of the game is to find the treasure, but they don't tell you that the game designer put the treasure in the bottom of your backpack, and you never think to look on your own person for your own treasure. It's always hidden on some foreign island somewhere, deserted, that has to be found with a map and a great quest nonetheless. But in the end, we find out that we are the treasure that we seek, but we have not seen it because we're lost in our mind. We're lost in the world of thought. And so he says, when the mind, for want of being sufficiently reduced by recollection at our first engaging in devotion, has contracted certain bad habits of wandering and dissipation, they are difficult to overcome and commonly draw us, even against our wills, to the things of the earth. So he's just saying that our mind, for want of being sufficiently reduced, sufficiently controlled, or brought to a silence in the beginning, when we start with devotion, picks up all of its old bad habits and likes to wander and think about sense objects and pleasures and memories. And all of that thinking about past is what creates a sense of ego in us. The ego is composed completely from the dead past. It has no reality in itself. And that creation of the ego from the dead past disallows it from seeing the perfection, contentment in the moment, and constantly paints a picture of what needs to be done, what should be done, what has to be done, what must be done, and gets us dwelling on the future where all of our desires lie, where we hope that one day when I get $1 million, or one day when I realize God, or one day when I'm married to the perfect person, or one day this, that, or the other, is caused because of this projection of a dead past by the ego into a non-existent future, preventing us from living in the treasure, which is this moment. We know that God is the I am. He is this present moment. Your existence is the divine. Your wisdom is the divine. Your love is the divine. Not reminiscent of them, not the perfume they wear. It is the presence of God. It is the nature of God. And it is our nature as we are imprinted in that form, in that layout, in the nature of the divine. So this mind has to be quieted in order for this ego to be starved from its past recollections, so that the pure moment, undefined by a confused mind, by a misinformed mind, is able to see itself as it is and not as it imagines or has been told by mind and memory what it is and how it is. And so he's telling us the remedy to this. He says, I believe one remedy for this wandering, jumping mind is to confess our faults and to humble ourselves before God. All right? And so before God, don't go thinking third person in the sky somewhere. Think this moment, and humbling ourselves to this moment, accepting this moment as perfect, not laying anything on it that's necessary to change or needed or wanted, but being content in our existence, in our own being, in this moment, is to humble ourselves before the divine, before the nature of love, before the nature of wisdom, before existence. And he says, I do not advise you to use a multiplicity of words in prayer. Many words and long discourses bring often the occasions of wandering. Yes, if you start wandering through the mind, trying to quiet the mind, you're the one stirring up the mind, right? So we don't want a dialogue caught in the temporal world of past, present, and future, because that belongs to the mind. Those belong to the tool. Past, present, future, cause and effect are in the mind only. They don't have any existence in and of themselves. And so he says, hold yourself in prayer before God, just simply being present in the moment, aware of awareness. The awareness within you is the presence of God. And to be aware of your own awareness is a great trick, because it can't be objectified. And that's the riddle that we have to figure out. How to know something that can't be known through mind or through senses, but actually turns out to be an isness that has always been present, but so calm and so silent that we never see it, that we never become aware of it. And because we're never aware of the treasure in our back pockets, we keep searching outwardly for it. We keep looking through this world of the material, which doesn't have any existence, substantial existence in and of itself. It depends on you for its existence. So he says, hold yourself in prayer before God, before this moment, before this inner silence, before this humility. Hold yourself in that state of non-thought. Non-thought meaning no story that describes the ego, describes the self, describes you through words from the material world of what you are, but allowing it in that silence to become obvious in and of itself to you. Not in a way that you're being told, but in a way that you're realizing what you are. He says, hold yourself before this moment like a dumb or paralytic beggar. All right, now why like a dumb or paralytic beggar? Not saying anything, so silencing the ego, not moving, not going into a sense of doership. So this is not a situation you're commanding, that you're making happen. This is a complete surrender to an understanding of the moment in absolute silence, absolute patience within your mind. A very difficult thing to achieve without a lot of practice. Had we not started off on the wrong road and run so far down it, we wouldn't have to do all this work, because really these are things that are. They're not things that have to be built or constructed or composed. They're returning to a nature that has long been ignored and forgotten. And now we have to find something that makes no noise and doesn't change, so there's nothing to grab our attention with. That's what makes the search so engaging, actually. So he says, let it be your business to keep your mind in the presence of the Lord, in the presence of the I Am, in the presence of being in this moment, not wandering into thoughts about the past, not wandering into desires and projections of the future, but being truly present in this moment. He says, if your mind wanders sometimes from that space, he says, don't disquiet yourself about it. Don't get caught up about it, because again, that just activates mind. It creates more dust in the air, more blinding veils for you to not be able to see through. So don't get upset about it. Just simply bring it back. He said, do not disquiet yourself for that. Trouble and disquiet serve rather to distract the mind than to recollect it. The will must bring it back in tranquility. If you persevere in this manner, God will have pity on you. You know, and this notion that the moment, your isness, takes pity on you, that you become your own helper in that sense, you know, to see and understand these things. Now it's funny because, as I hear myself saying all of these things, they've all been said before, but there's nothing new to add. The problem is quite simple. The solution is mysterious in its nature because it's utterly different from anything else that we do in this world. Anytime in this material world that we want to learn something, we engage the senses to explore it. We engage the mind to analyze it and find its relationship with all of the other sense objects that we've placed into the mind. And we create this relative existence from that process. And that's how we learn, and that's how we know things in the materialistic way, in the worldly way. But the knowing in the spiritual way is a knowing of something that exists in and of itself already, is not played before the senses to be observed and played with as a separate thing. It is you. This awareness, this divinity within, is you. It cannot be objectified. It cannot be placed in front of you to look at and to study it. And so we have to let go of our addiction to constant thought, our addiction to constant stimulus and entertainment, our addiction to a constantly distracted mind for our peace, to learn to set all of that aside. And in the silence of being, when the mind is not telling the story of the ego and not projecting the desires of ignorance, in that solitude, in that quiet space, you become aware of the presence of a peace that they say passes all understanding. A peace that exists outside of the time of mind. Past, present, and future do not exist. Only now exists. Which, just a minor bit of thinking, you can see that that's all the truth. We've never experienced anything but the present moment. The idea of the past is a construct of the mind, and the idea of a future is a projection of the mind. There's only this reality, this moment. So everything that needs to be done is present here and now. And so this is the riddle that we're in. I know that it sounds crazy and far-fetched and oovy-groovy and all of those wonderful words for spiritual and religious people, but there is a truth to it. There is a treasure hidden there, and it can be found. And that is the purpose of your life, because that will unlock in you the person you have always dreamed of being, that loving, patient, caring, strong, independent, unique, one without a second. That is realization. That's your destiny. That's the point of all of this.